Weckerl, Craig. And he's with us here.
Good evening, Dr. Pell. My name is Jürgen Weckerle. I'm Conservation Chair of the Ramapo-Catskill Group of the Sierra Club. The Champlain-Hudson Power Express is a very impressive project. It stands alone from traditional applications since it is a long-distance transmission cable only. As Senator Bonacek mentioned earlier, it is very similar to the MAQ003 project, which was a power line on towers, but it was the same principle. It does not generate or produce electricity, nor does it serve as a utility which distributes electricity to retail customers. This presentation is a classic example of segmentation, and that is something that the whole NEPA and the Article 7 process should acknowledge and should be a little bit more careful in terms of the source of the electricity and the end users of that electricity. The project takes no responsibility for the supply, for the reliability, for the need, or for the end use of that electricity. It is a cumulative environmental, social, economic, public cost impacts that will both drive this project and will be driven by this project that must be examined by the EIS, not just the construction aspects in isolation of the total picture. The EIS must establish whether or not a need actually exists for the new source of supply to the New York City, North Jersey metro region. NEPA and Article 7 of the Public Service requirements both require a declaration of public need and the taking of a hard look at a full range of alternatives to any added supply. If there is no need, the no action option should prevail. As late as April of this year, the New York State Independent Systems Operators, the outfit comprised of all merchants in the field that govern the distribution of electricity throughout New York State, indicated that there was no existing or anticipated need for electricity in New York State during the next 10-year planning cycle. New York ISO has declared, however, that the priority goal for New York State is to upgrade the existing substation and distribution system of each utility and to modernize the regional grid. The EIS must evaluate the results of efficiency. An example is the closing of a plant in Rockland County, further downstream on the Hudson River. During the spring of '07, the Myron-owned Lovett coal-fired power plant, located on the Hudson at Stony Point, was under a consent decree to upgrade the emission system. Instead, Lovett and Myron petitioned the Public Service Commission to be decommissioned. Due to the fact that the Orange and Rockland utilities reconstructed a major local substation and power line, efficiencies were created which made up for the loss of the Lovett power production in its totality, just the efficiency alone. The request was granted by the Public Service Commission for decommissioning, and the plant has since been deconstructed and dismantled. The EIS must evaluate recent additions to the supply, such as the cable under Long Island Sound from Connecticut to Suffolk and Nassau counties, and the Neptune cable across New York Harbor from New Jersey to Long Island. The EIS must evaluate the current projects in advanced planning on the books here in New York right as we speak, which also probably have no need as I'm describing this scenario. But there they are in competition, so to speak. The Cross Hudson cable from North Jersey to mid-Manhattan, the 49th Street Con Ed station, has been on the books for a generation now, has never been constructed, will get fast-tracked when that time comes because there has been no need. The time has not been right. It's ready to go. The Transco gas pipeline extension through North Jersey to Lower Manhattan, that's in the pipeline, so to speak. The 1,000 megawatt Cricket Valley power plant in the town of Dover, across the Hudson just east of us here near the Connecticut border. That gas-generated power plant will feed into the Con Ed transmission line that leads into the Bronx. The 630 megawatt competitive power venture power plant in the town of Wayanda, outside of Middletown in Orange County, that will feed into the Marcy South power line. The 63 megawatts to be generated from existing New York City reservoirs in the Catskills. Cumulatively, there's an awful lot of electricity that's needed above and beyond the estimates of no additional need by ISO. All of the projects I just mentioned use existing transmission infrastructure with little or no additional expense to create new transmission lines. The EIS must evaluate the applicant's own New England project, the Maine Express I believe it's called, which will transport the same sources of Quebec-generated electricity by cable to Boston and to the New England ISO. Also, the ability of sharing that electricity with the New York State ISO must be evaluated and detailed in the EIS. The EIS must examine the full range of demand-side management initiatives from improved building codes and code enforcement to smart meters, which include the simple, really dated time-of-day meters to the fully digitized systems that are planned. The current heat wave in New York City is another example where Con Ed has arranged through radio transmission to cut back on major building central air conditioning systems to reduce the need for the overload. And again, that's where the problem has been identified, the overload within the distribution, within the city limits, from the substations to the neighborhood distribution to the consumer. The EIS must evaluate alternate supply from renewable sources, such as programs funded by NYSERDA, the New York State agency, including household solar and wind net metering projects for residences, and now that's been expanded for commercial property. The issues of cogeneration, which are coming online, are getting special subsidies that will produce heat from heat will produce electricity from mini generators, also has to be looked at. Several routes are proposed for this cable. The EIS must describe the role of eminent domain in acquiring the properties for those routes. Sources of electricity. The applicant states that electricity to be transported will be renewable, which is related to its U.S. government-funded subsidy. During a prior presentation, actually I think it was right here in this very room, earlier this spring, the applicant indicated that the sources would be both hydropower and wind power. The hydropower would be from the Hydro-Quebec Lower Churchill Falls project yet to be constructed. The wind power would originate from turbines in western New York State, with that power being wheeled north across the Canadian border, then east to the Hertel substation outside of Montreal, and then south to the project's cable connection as described earlier. The EIS must detail the sources of electricity and evaluate if they really are a net renewable, eco-friendly source. Dams are yet to be built and forests are yet to be cleared and flooded. What effect will the loss of forest and habitat have on increasing greenhouse gases and on the wildlife to be displaced? What is the chance that methane and other climate-changing chemicals will be introduced into the atmosphere as a result of the flooding? The hydropower is to be generated from artificially created reservoirs, not from free running streams and rivers.
Excuse me, Jürgen, do you have a great deal more? Because I'm afraid of being unfair to the other speakers.